എല്ലാവർക്കും ഞങ്ങളുടെ പുതിയ വീഡിയോയിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം. വെൽക്കം ടു GMG അക്കാദമി. എല്ലാവർക്കും ഈ വീഡിയോ കണ്ട് ഇഷ്ടപ്പെടുകയാണെങ്കിൽ തീർച്ചയായും ഒന്ന് സബ്സ്ക്രൈബ് ചെയ്തേക്കണേ. ഒപ്പം ഒരു ബെൽ ബട്ടണും പ്രസ് ചെയ്ത് ഞങ്ങളുടെ യൂട്യൂബ് ചാനലിനെ പ്രോത്സാഹിപ്പിക്കാൻ ഞങ്ങൾ വിനീതമായി അഭ്യർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. ഒപ്പം ഒരു ലൈക്കും ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് നൽകണമേ. Again, welcome to our academic classes. Today we discuss English grammar with spoken English. A brief history of languages. Why spoken English? For business executives, students. Speak the language aloud. Think in the target language. Speak in the language whenever possible. ഇന്നത്തെ വീഡിയോയിൽ ഞങ്ങൾ വിശദമായി പഠിപ്പിക്കുന്നത് ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് ഭാഷയുടെ ഉപയോഗങ്ങളും എങ്ങനെ അത് പഠിക്കാം, എങ്ങനെ മനസ്സിലാക്കാം എന്നതിനെ കുറിച്ചാണ്. പ്ലീസ് സബ്സ്ക്രൈബ് അവർ ചാനൽ. ക്രിയേറ്റീവ് ഇംഗ്ലീഷ്. Be create English learning. Introduction. Before we begin, let's be frank to ourselves. There is no magic formula that will work for all who want to speak fluently in a non-native language, because every person has different levels of understanding and learning speed curve. Just as some learn to play basketball better and quicker than others, different people learn to speak a language depending on their individual learning aptitude. It is quite a demanding task to learn and speak a non-native language fluently. This tutorial is meant for those readers who learn English as their second language. It provides sufficient information on how non-native English speakers can spot and rectify the errors they commit inadvertently while speaking in English language. English grammar with spoken English. A person stands to learn English quicker if he stresses more on the spoken side of it, as compared to the grammatical side. Constant speaking and listening to correct usage will incorporate the right rules of grammar in his brain. This does not mean that grammar can be neglected. A conversation becomes more meaningful with the right usage of grammar. But as with anything, new stress should be more on practicing what you have learned many times first before moving on to something more complex. Similarly, beginners should stress on speaking what they have learned first before moving on to grammar and more technical stuff. A brief history of speech. In the 20th century, a lot of people had a common opinion that individuals learned the art of conversing during their childhood by observing people around them and imitating them. However, this theory was later discarded, as it could not explain the structural and grammatical mistakes children did when they spoke specific sentences. For example, a child might make "food give you me" in a family where no one would ever say that line. This means that even at such a tender age, a child's mind starts processing and creating new rules in speech. While language competency is inherited, the languages themselves are transmitted while learning. Effective communication helps individuals as well as business organizations to be more productive, to generate innovative ideas, and to build strong relationships with internal and external teams. English, the language of business. There was a time when speaking English accurately and fluently was considered a status symbol, but now English has become a necessity, as it is a universal language with around 45% of global business being conducted in English. Today, due to globalization, all the multinational companies either recruit or prefer to recruit aspirants who communicate fluently and correctly in English. Remember that spoken English is supposed to help you in conversing with people. The listeners are more important than the speakers. It's not what you say, but how you say it. Accuracy is fluency. Speaking fluently in English is a major goal for many non-native speakers. However, to communicate your ideas effectively, you will need both accuracy as well as fluency. In majority of cases, people are either good at accuracy or good at fluency. The following cases depict the same. An English language perfectionist might pause frequently to correct himself when he makes accidental errors in grammar, pronunciation, and structure. However, in the long run, it will disengage the listeners from the conversation. On the other hand, a fluent person who does not bother much about grammatical accuracy might realize soon enough that the listeners are finding it difficult to understand what you really mean. So, how can you make sure to balance a mix of both is the question. The ideal way is definitely to speak accurately and fluently, but that will come after years of practice. The important point is to strike a balance between the two. Why spoken English? Why spoken English? Speaking in English plays a vital role in advancing your professional career to greater heights. It plays an equally important role during one's academic career as well. Here in this chapter, in this class, we will explain the significance of English in achieving career progression and personal development. Let's learn how good communication skills can become your asset for business executives. Effective communication helps business executives in dealing effectively with co-workers, superiors, clients, and external vendors. For students having a good command over spoken English express their feelings better. They communicate well with classmates, friends, instructors, and parents, which enables them to reduce a lot of stress and pressure. Lack of effective communication skills is more often than not the primary reason why people tend to hate their jobs. With a little bit of improvement in communication skills, especially spoken English, they can realize their true potential and in the long run would love the same job they used to hate so much. With the globalization of business, almost all the major companies have started looking for employees who can communicate better in English. This is now becoming a standard communication channel in the business world. With this, speaking in English has become a mandatory requirement in the fields of information technology, call centers, SPOs, to name a few. Identifying language barriers. Non-native speakers find it difficult to speak just what they really want. Sometimes they even struggle to obtain basic information concerning products or services while communicating. Teachers frequently complain about non-native speakers. Lack of critical thinking. Sometimes they feel that students are lost or confused, but the problem lies in the student's ability, or rather inability, to communicate effectively. What stops us? What stops us? Different speakers have different motives behind learning English. Some learn it to clear their examination papers, while some to get job offers. And there are some who learn English simply because they love the language. It's still debatably if motivation yields success or it's the other way round. But English can only be learned out of the love to be able to hold a meaningful conversation in it. Limitations of grammar. People interested in improving their spoken English need to understand that learning the rules and usages of English grammar does not improve their chances of speaking the language, but confuses them and discourages their speaking. Spoken English can be only enhanced by repeated listening to correct usage, constantly speaking the language with audiences with different levels of aptitudes in speech, and learning grammar, rules and usages simultaneously. Rules are important because they set the guidelines to what is acceptable and what is not. Here in this video, we will discuss the 4 rules of learning: speaking, thinking, practicing and checking. We will discuss the 4 rules of learning: speaking, thinking, practicing and checking. May suggest that continuous practice is the key to fluent spoken English. However, studies have found that only practice does not necessarily guarantee results. The best way to learn how to speak in English is listening to large volumes of audio input, learning its grammatical structure and vocabulary, and then using the knowledge you have gained on a targeted audience. Speak the language aloud. Traditional spoken English training methods take a very long time to yield results, if at all, because the stress is more on reading and writing. However, speaking a language needs a lot of interaction with the target audience, who can provide direct feedback and also suggest improvements to your speech. Think in the target language. Most of us have a faulty technique of thinking about a sentence in our native language and then translating it in our head into English before finally speaking it out. You need to remember that speaking in itself is an extremely tricky and complex exercise involving a huge part of the brain, throat and tongue muscles and wind flow. Adding mental translation to the already complex task leads to errors like abrupt pauses and filters in speaking. Thinking in the target language is a major decision which has to be taken by the individual. Speak in the language whenever possible. Any language comes with its own set of sounds, phonetics, wind flow that makes pronunciation of words and sounds in that language very different from the way we speak in our native language. To master these variations in sounds and speech, one needs immense practice of the correctly pronounced sounds. Never repeat this mistake. There is a misconception that while speaking English, a person should be encouraged to just speak in the language without any stress on proper pronunciation or grammar sense. This in reality adversely affects a person's learning as speaking incorrect English is actually forming a bad habit of incorrect English. The right way is to train the speakers on basic grammar skills and guide them to create simple sentences using appropriate grammar. Fossilization. A person who is interested in just putting his message across may not be completely aware of correct usage of grammar, as his primary objective is only to convey his or her message across by using any means of communication available to them, which include signaling, paraphrasing, signaling and directing. In this way, over a period of time, these people learn a self-adapted method of speaking. They learn that there arise in subject-verb agreement instead of her, us, instead of we are not affecting their transfer of the message to the listeners. So they start to subconsciously ignore certain rules of grammar, even when they are introduced to it, trained in it and asked to communicate with it. This phenomenon is called fossilization, where a speaker continues to make the same mistakes over and over again, even he knows the correct usage, simply because he is encouraged by the fact that his message is getting understood without him not having to abide by the rules of grammar. Speakers like these need to be nurtured in an environment where their target audience encourages them to talk in simple and accurate English and ask them to repeat themselves when they make such mistakes. This will eventually help these speakers internalize the correct usage, as opposed to storing all the usages for a short period of time and then forgetting them as soon as the testing scenario like examination, evaluation, presentation changes. The art of paraphrasing. Despite having a wide vocabulary enables you to speak fluently and accurately in English. Not knowing the right word for something you want to mention should not dent your confidence too. A lot of people feel insecure about speaking English for the fear of not being able to find the right words. In cases like these, they should revert to a very effective technique called paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is a technique of using an alternative word or sentences to describe something you wanted to say. For example, instead of saying rhinoceros, you could say, you know, that animal with a horn on its head. Or instead of receipt, you could say that document you are supposed to give to the HR. When you speak to someone, it's way communication. Both are equally important to be part of the conversation. If your listeners lose interest while you wait for the right word, the conversation might get over very quickly. Paraphrasing will allow you to continue your speaking while involving the listeners by asking them to help you out with the right words. Speaker, I wanted to. What do you call it? The place where they keep animals. Listener, yes, a zoo. You went to the zoo. Filter the content words. The traditional approach of learning grammar has always been to help you understand what others are saying and at what time they walk, what time they talk. A lot of people get confused with the excessive intake of information while taking to a native speaker. They complain that the native speakers speak the language too fast. even when the native speakers are speaking with a perfectly normal rate of speech. This is due to the fact that your brain is taking in way too much information. Grammar, intonation, meaning, usage, pronunciation than your brain can process at one time. The idea is to listen carefully for content words that help us in getting a very basic idea of what the person is talking about. Listen carefully to the entire sentence, picking only those familiar words that you could comprehend and filter out the rest of the words. Now you have lesser and familiar words to understand the meaning of. Try to arrange the words in a sentence and start paraphrasing. Beginners jitters. If you have understood what the speaker was saying, he would respond with a yes, or else he would reply back with a much easier version of his original sentence. By doing this, you have given him a clear idea of much of his former sentence. You have grasped the meaning of so that the next sentences he speaks will be directly towards explaining the rest of the information in a simpler way. Similarly, don't get upset or disappointed when you cannot apply all the correct rules of grammar in spontaneous speech. It's perfectly normal for a beginner to become nervous when you are trying to be fluent and accurate in a non-native language. But the key lies in enjoying the conversation without paying a lot of stress on correctness in the beginning. The connecting sounds. Vowels help us in distinguishing one word from another. Needless to say, when you are not fluent with the vowel sound, your speech sounds confusing and vague. There are no straightforward answers to the question of which language has more vowels, since that entirely depends on how they are counted. However, in the following activity, we have tried to list the most common variations on vowels in English. You are requested to read the words aloud to understand the difference in pronunciation. Vowels brings in words with almost identical spellings. A huge number of non-native English speakers make frequent English slips-ups during one-hour sessions. Instead, they are supposed to have awareness of where their weak spots are during their initial period of learning. By this, they can be close to understanding themselves and how they can progress from that point. Stressing on words in speech. Many non-native speakers tend to forget that reading a text does not explain intonation in speech. In English, it is possible to put the main stress on more or less any wording sentence. For instance, the speaker can stress on reflecting the meaning they intend the listeners to understand. Strategy to avoid errors while speaking. You can record sample pieces of your speech and play them to find out the areas where you can improve further. It will help you in reviewing and understanding your strengths and weaknesses better. Secondly, ask your friends to give constructive feedback and suggest areas of improvement. It helps in getting more insights and uncover more details which were missed by you. Play the recorded audio several times and try to rectify the errors until you have to master the technique. It is a time-tested strategy used even by experienced speakers. Did you notice any difference in the way your brain functions in both the cases? Human brain is trained to accept running test as a just information. Hence the level of mental exercise is minimum. However, when we try reading it aloud, different factors which are listed below will start coming to our mind, which increases brain activity, pronunciation, speech, breath, mind manipulation. This is the reason why many experts state the traditional method of book reading as a complete waste of time, unless it includes exercise where people are encouraged to read from text and speak it aloud. At times, at top volumes, slangs consist of a vocabulary of non-standard words and phrases in a given language. Its use implies that the user is familiar with whatever is referred to, or with a group of people who are familiar with it and use the term. Variations in spoken English. Different people will need different levels of accuracy and fluency in spoken English, depending on the professions they are. Let's discuss the different levels here. Professional spoken English. This type of language is used by professionals from specific industries. The speech used here is highly technical, with stress put on facts, figures, data and industry jargons. Example, how is your day going? Sir, very busy. I am preparing a detailed presentation on marketing strategy and competitor analysis which would be presented to the client. I am not even half done yet. You must feel anxious out now. Sir, of course, that's an understatement. Literary spoken English. This is the language used in magazines and newspapers. The stress is more on communicating with a large section of the crowd. The speech follows all rules of grammar and yet the words used are simple and common. Playing word games to relax throat and mouth muscles. Opening the mouth and manipulating the flow of air is one of the fundamental techniques of speech. Proper utilization of these techniques enhances our clarity and pronunciation of speech. Practice tongue twisters and word puzzles frequently. Take a look at the following examples. The big black bug bit the big black ear, but the big black bear bit the big black bug back. The thought I thought was in the thought I thought. There was a fisherman named Fisher who fished for some fish in Fisher till a fish with a grin pulled the fisherman in. Now they are fishing the Fisher for Fisher. Record your voice while practicing speaking. Listening to your voice while talking improves your confidence and gives you a record of your progress. Try to speak with people in your locality. After you gain some confidence, try to speak with the people who you know. It will encourage you towards improvement. Listening to English songs and understanding the lyrics. Listening to English songs and understanding their lyrics helps in building a good vocabulary of commonly spoken English. It also helps improve the way to pronounce certain words. Be careful of the songs you choose, though. A common saying is that it's not about what you say. It's about how you say. Nothing could be truer in the case of speaking, especially public speaking. where a great emphasis is put on words deliberately to invoke strong emotions from the listeners. There are many exercises that can be practiced regularly to improve expression, some of which are discussed here. Exercise on increasing expression. Try to listen to native speakers and imbibe their usage and structure of words. Speak with non-native speakers who understand but hesitate to speak English. Try to learn how to speak confidently even with mistakes and read text aloud. Talk in English over the phone with the pupil. It will increase intonation abilities. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are common and absolutely normal. Study grammar so that supports the purpose of language, that is communication. Overcome fear of losing face. Take advantage of opportunities to use English to communicate with both native and proficient non-native speakers. Basic questions. Opportunities to discover English. Can you book a hotel in English? Can you count from 1 to 30 in English? Can you describe how you are feeling in English? Can you exchange money in English? Can you help me with my homework? Can you iron your own clothes? Can you name 4 shapes in English? Can you name 7 colors in English? Can you order your meal in a Brazilian restaurant? Can you say 10 adjectives in English? Can you say 10 parts of the body in English? Can you say the alphabet in English? Can you say the days of the week? Can you say the months of the year? Can you say sing a song in English? Can you speak in public? Can you swim for 100 meters? Can you talk about your daily routine? Can you talk about your family in English? Can you tell the time in English? How about having a soda right now? How are you doing today? How could you forget my birthday? How did you get your current job? How did you learn English? How did you meet your husband? Wife? How do you celebrate Christmas? How do you go to school? How do you learn new things? How do you prefer you speak? How do you say friendship in Portuguese? How do you say I don't in Spanish? How do you sleep? How do you spell your last name? How do you want to remember? How is your family? How old are you? How old were you when you learned to drive? How old were you when you learned to read? How old were you when you learned to sing? How long? How long ago did you get your first job? How long ago did you meet your best friend? How long ago did you play soccer? How long ago did you see your family? How long ago did your grandfather die? How long do you intend to study English for? How long do your children watch TV? How long does it take you to do your homework? How long does it take you to do your makeup? How long does it take you to shave? How long does the movie last? How long have you been living in the city? How long have you been married? How long have you been playing chess? How long have you been studying English? How long have you been working at this company? How long is the meeting at church? How long is the trip from your country to Brazil? How long is your language course? How long is your lunch break? How many? How many beaches do you know? How many books did you read last year? How many brothers do you have? How many CDs you have? How many children are there in your family? How many children would you like to have? How many countries would you like to visit? How many days a week do you study English? How many friends do you have? How many hours can you work non-stop? How many languages do you speak? How many people are there in your church? How many people do you know abroad? How many pets do you have? How many sodas did you drink this week? How many times did you study last week? How many times a day do you eat? How many TV sets are there in your house? How many uncles and aunties do you have? In how many places have you worked so far? How much? Do you know how much your parents love you? How much did you pay for your house? How much did your watch cost? How much do you have in your wallet? How much do you need now? How much do you save every month? How much do you want to learn per month? How much do you want to pay for a new car? How much garbage do you produce every year? How much is a bus ticket in your city? How much is a hamburger and a soda? How much is a notebook? How much is a pair of wedding rings? How much is a set of playing cards? How much is to rent a car in your city? How much is the perfect salary for you? How much is your rent? How much is your electricity bill? How much money do you need to survive? How much do you like to earn per year? How often? How often are you online? How often do you clean your house? How often do you do your nails? How often do you drink beer with your friends? How often do you eat pizza? How often do you have a haircut? How often do you play soccer? How often do you play with your children? How often do you see your relatives? How often do you shave? How often do you speak with your parents? How often do you study English? How often do you use MSN or Skype? How often do you use computer? How often do you visit your friends? How often do you wash your car? How often do you wash your clothes? How often do you watch TV? How often do you work out? How often do you write and answer emails? What are you doing? What are you thinking about? What are we going to do now? What day is today? What did you buy at the store? What did you eat last night? What would you like to study? What would you like to study? What do you do? What do you know about the Brazilian people? What do you think about your country? What do you usually do on Christmas Eve? What do you want to do now? What is your last name? What did you wake up last Sunday? What time do you usually go to bed? What time is it now? What's the difference between here and there? What is your favorite beverage? What is your greatest achievement? What is your greatest dream? When are you going to graduate? When did you buy your first car? When did you first meet your husband wife? When did you get married? When did you go to school for the first time? When did you last go downtown? When did you last go on vacation? When did you last go to church? When did you last go to school? When did you last go to the supermarket? When did you last study German? When did you start studying English? When did you start working? When did your father retire? When do you play with your kids? When do you usually study English? When do you want to have a baby? When is your birthday? When was your first child born? When would do you like to speak fluently? Where Where are you going tonight? Where are you working? Where are your parents from? Where did you get married? Where did you go on your honeymoon? Where did you work last year? Where do you go on Sunday? Where do you study English? Where do you usually go on holidays? Where do you want to go tonight? Where do you work? Where do your parents live? Do you know where I can exchange money? Where does your best friend live? Where does your wife work? Where is the nearest bus station? Where is your mother from? Where were you born? Where would you like to be now? Where would you like to go on your vacation? Why Why are you so happy today? Why are you studying English? Why aren't you studying anymore? Why did you go downtown alone? Why did you sell your car? Why didn't you call me again? Why did not you study for the test? Why do teenagers sleep in the afternoon? Why do you get up so early? Why do you go to church every weekend? Why do you go to the supermarket every day? Why do you need to talk to me? Why do you want to learn a new language? Why don't you always tell the truth? Why don't you buy a CD player? Why don't you drink a soda? Why don't you eat meat anymore? Why don't you start saving money? Why don't you try again? Why is the planet getting warmer?